And cats and noobs, we're going to be going over a review on how to build your basic rocket ship. In class I showed how to do this. I will be showing a UFO later and a separate one if you should choose to do the UFO rather instead. Okay, so the rocket ship that we're going to look at doing today is similar to this rocket ship that you see right here. Let's render it. Okay, so it's like your basic kind of cartoony, almost sci-fi rocket ship with a super rocket blast coming out of it. And then we see another spaceship back here. This is for more advanced cats. So we're going to do basic rocket. So now we're getting into like actual modeling. I mean, we haven't really been doing too much until now. So we're going to start off with a new file. Also, you'll be texturing these yourself. And I want to point out down here under load material presets that there's a million, billion, trillion, different materials down here for you to use. Okay. Of course, you can make custom ones yourself. If you look at my Neum rocket here, copy that. I put a shiny material on it, but there's also some custom flames, you know, like hot rod flames on it. Thought it looked cool. Anyways, let's make this. So when you start off modeling, typically you start off with some sort of basic shape, and that could either be made of NURBS, a lathe, a sweep, and extrude, or loft, which we'll learn a little bit later. That's for cylindrical shapes like bottles and vases, and posts and stuff like that. And when sweeps are tube shapes, and extrudes are custom flat shapes. And a loft is kind of like creating a skin over something. There's other stuff in here too. Or you start off with the basic building blocks like we have with your space. And so we're going to start with a cone today. This makes an excellent rocket shape. So I'm going to spike it out a little bit. Lift it up to the floor here so it's not sunk halfway into the floor and obstructing your view. We should look at this under display with ground shading and lines, so we can see the segments. And remember, all these basic shapes up here have segments to them, which give them more functionality, gives them more parts to bend, makes them smoother, better shapes. You'll find the cone segments here under height and rotation segments. The rotation segments are these ones, and the height are the horizontal ones. We need height segments, so I'm going to make it like about the same. You can see the segments now. That's because we're looking at it with ground shading lines, which is good to do while you're modeling, because you can kind of see what you have to work with. You know, when it's on just the default ground shading, you don't know. All right, so we're going to take this and we're going to do what's called a deformer to it. And we've already done one deformer. We did the wrap, and we did two. We did the Explosion FX. We're going to do another one today called Bold. And the Bold's deformer is represented by this blue box here. And you usually want this deformer to kind of conform around the shape as best as you can get it. So right now it's not quite as tall or long, and it's a little bit like wider and fatter than the shape. So the way you just take these deformers and you size them up to fit your object is down here in attributes under object, where you have X, Y, and Z. So those are the three axes, green, red, and blue. And if you're like, what axis goes to what? There's a little key down here always where it'll help you remember if you don't, well, you don't need to remember because you can always look at that. Anyways, I'm going to make it taller, so I'm going to go to the y-axis. So this is alphabetical X, Y, Z, X, Y, Z. So I'm going to go to the middle one here and make it like 350. So that's tall enough. I can make it about 200 to conform around my shape a little bit better. And now it's fitting a lot more nicely. The deformers go into the shapes as children, and they usually have a dot that you learned when we did the FX and when we did the wrap. There's the dot. So if I just grab that and go back and forth, it starts bulging out my shape, except it's kind of getting a little like onion-y or St. Basil Cathedral, Aladdin's towers. Anyways, I think they call that Byzantine architecture or more, I don't remember. Anyways, you can drag it out and bulge it. You can squash it. There's all kinds of stuff you can do to it. You can also apply multiple deformers and stuff, but what we're going to do with this is after we bulge it out a little bit, is we're kind of nudging it into the shape that we want. So I'm going to lift it up a little bit, and it kind of straightens out the edges up there. Okay. And then what we also want to do is bulge it out. And you create this like little nubby thing down here, like a flare, how it flares out. This will be part of our little rocket shape. And it's a little too stubby and fat, but we're gonna fix it. So we're kind of like, we have to have like a creative vision here where we're trying to nudge it towards the shape, the overall shape that we want. And I know that after I do this, I can stretch this out and make it more like rocket shape instead of more like acorn-y, like an acorn shape here, or you know, like I said, Aladdin Tower, Byzantine architecture, like St. Basil's Cathedral, if you're familiar with that, the famous one that's in Russia and has all those nice, cool tower tops. All right, so what do we do with this? So once we've deformed it like this, and we want to keep it vertical like this while we're building it, so we don't have to like deal with it and do extra work, because the deformers appear this way. That is a default, they go up and down. So if I were to flip the cone, then I'd have to also flip the deformer, and then that's extra work. So we're going to work smart. We flip it when we're done. Okay, so we'll flip it onto its side when we're done. So anyways, I'm going to take that and convert it into a polygon shape. Remember, there's two types of shapes. There's basic shapes that are called primitives, and then there's polygons, which are more advanced shapes, and you can do more to advanced shapes. And when you do 3D modeling, you're typically working with a lot of polygon advanced shapes. Okay, so we're going to do some actual stuff here under Create Tools. We're going to do what's called extrude, and we're going to model this a little bit. And we're also going to use today a modeling tool called a bool, which allows you to knock holes in shapes with other shapes. So I can knock a circular shape in a square shape, or vice versa. And you'll see what that does, excuse me. All right, so we're gonna go to Mesh today, Create Tools, Extrude, and we're gonna go over to Bool from your modeling tools. Not yet though. So we need to convert this into a polygon. We know that we can convert things into polygons by going to Mesh in the menu bar, Mesh, and going to Conversion. If you don't see Mesh, then you go over here to your layout and put it on standard, and that should correct that, and Mesh should appear. Conversion, current state to object. That makes a copy as a polygon shape, which we know it's a polygon because of the blue triangle, little 3-dot icon. All polygons have that same icon. That's the difference. All primitives have like something else. They have like usually what they are, but when you convert them, they become polygons. So anyways, you could delete the original one. Boom, it's gone. Hit the delete button on your keyboard, and this is the one we're left over with. It's like a shape, just like if we made any of these, we don't have it calculating the deformity and all that kind of stuff. Now we can work with this, and so now's the time to start using the rotation section down here in your measurements palette where it says P. You're going to knock this down 90 degrees and hit apply, and that will flip your comb, let's move it, onto its side perfectly. We don't want to do it by hand because with the rotation tool, because it's really hard to get it a perfect 90 degrees down there. You can see it's always like some weird decimal or something. So just 90 degrees, boom. If we wanted to flip it back up, we just put it back at 0. If we wanted to flip it upside down, 180. Put it back to 0. Negative 90 is the opposite direction. So those are the magic numbers, 90, negative 90, and 180. You don't really have to remember much else. Degrees are pretty easy to remember how to do. I don't have a little drawing program here open, do I, that I can draw in? I could kind of demonstrate it here, I think. No, I'll do it on something else. I don't think I need to demonstrate it here. It'd take too long to kind of set up the degrees. But that's 90 degrees is on its side. And then we're going to stretch this out. So we're going to go to the scale tool. And now it starts becoming more of a rocket shape. Before you do anything else to this, copy paste it. So you have 2. And then shrink the copy down to a smaller version. You're going to need this for later. So let's just stick that up there for now. All right, big rocket shape. Now we can start doing our modeling on this. So the first thing that we want to do is knock a hole in the cockpit around indentation. We're not making a pilot or a chair or anything, but you could if you wanted to. We're going to take a sphere, and we're going to use that sphere to knock a round hole or an egg-shaped hole into our cockpit. We don't want it to be round like this, so we're going to take that sphere and we're going to go and convert it. Remember, under conversion you can go make editable, which has that symbol, or you could go over here and make it the same thing with that symbol, so they're the same. That's the shortcut right here, that tool. As under mesh conversion, make editable, so they're the same. So we can click on that and convert the sphere into a polygon sphere. And then what we can do with that is we can squish it and squash it and turn it into more of an oval egg shape so that it kind of fits the cockpit a little bit better. And then we're going to rotate it with, gotta move our view, the red wheel here, and kind of get it in position. We need to knock our hole into the ship there. I kind of want to get it sort of like matching the angle. So I don't want to like that. I want to kind of like match the angle of the ship. So I'm kind of like looking at these lines and kind of lining them up and stuff like that. All right, and then maybe let's squish it a little bit more. That's where we will have the cockpit, where technically the pilot would sit. All right, so now we're going to do a bool. Okay, we're going to do a bool with this shape, the sphere, and we'll just call this extra cone up here so that you don't think it's the main cone here. So basically the rocket ship and the sphere. I'll rename cone rocket. So you just double click on the word and you can type in your own name. Now we know what is what here. So the bool is found right here where you see this instance icon of like little squares. We're going to go to bool over here. And bool does what it says. It allows you to knock a hole in one shape with another shape. There is a rule to the bool. Only 2 items can go in the bool. One is the shape used to knock a hole in the other shape. To demonstrate a bool really quick, I'm just going to go to a new file, which you don't need to do, and just show you. So here's a cube, and let's say we want to knock a hole in this cube. They don't have to be advanced polygon shapes or anything, but you can convert them afterwards when you're done, so it's not this big bool thing. I'm going to take a cylinder, and that'll be what I use as a tool to knock a hole in the cube. So I flip it onto its side down here, on the P right there where we did it before, and I put that in position. For the bool to work, the shapes have to touch or intersect or to actually be punching through it like this. And so you make a bool, and the rule with the bool is the shape that you want to use as a tool to punch a hole in the other shape with goes into the bool as a child first, and then the shape that you want left over with the visible hole in it goes into the bool last. They are both equal children. And now I have a bool. It's pretty amazing. You can actually animate this. So if I wanted like a portal opening up, I can, have that animate with my radius down here. You can see that that number was the one moving with that bullet. Or if I wanted it to kind of like just pass through or something, I can animate that. There's all kinds of stuff you can do with this. Now, if I dragged them into the bool in the wrong order, like if I did it backwards or I got all dyslexic or something and my cylinder was the last one dragged in, then I get a different result. Okay. If you ever make a mistake like that, just reverse the order. You can drag it all out of the bool again and then try to drag it back into the bool. Or if you are in the bool in the wrong order, then just move the items around inside the bool. Okay, so that's a bool. It's found right here, bool. And one shape knocks a hole in another shape. And once you're done with it, usually you want to take the whole thing and do a mesh conversion, current state to object, and then that makes it into polygons. And the important thing about polygon shapes is that you can connect them like Legos. So I could delete the original here, and I could go to the new ones, the polygon ones, and they're advanced, and I can go to conversion and do a connect objects plus delete right below, make editable. We're going to do this a lot, so this isn't a one-time like, okay, I can just like, watch the video. This is going to be something you're going to do all year long, so remember this or try to remember this. Connect objects plus delete turns it into a single shape, and now it's much more simple, and we can do much more to it. We can have an easier time modeling into it because I reduced it down to a more simpler form of itself. All right, so back to the spaceship. So into the bool, we're going to take the sphere and then the rocket, and that knocks a hole in it. Okay. And now we're going to make our like little dome where the cockpit would be. Now we need another sphere the same size as this sphere. What do we have that's the same size as this sphere? You guessed it. We have this sphere. We can just copy, recycle, reuse, cannibalize. So we take that sphere and we'll copy paste it. I'm going to drag it up so you can see it. I don't need it to quite be a full sphere. I just need it to be kind of like a half sphere. So I'm going to do another bool with that. I'm going to so we're really learning bools today. So a cube makes a really good saw. You can saw off, stuff with it, with a bool. So I just have to take this cube and match the angle and then bring it up. And then find a spot where I think I should cut it in half. Kind of fix it up that way, make sure it's not coming through the bottom here, so I might have to make it a little bit longer. Kind of get it just right with the angle, and then make a second bool. Number 2 bool. What goes into the bool first? The tool or the shape that you're using to knock a hole in another shape. And when I mean knock a hole, you can be like cutting off a piece or sawing it in half, or just doing an indentation, or like scooping out a section, or completely punching a hole all the way through. That shape goes in the bool first. Whatever is, if you can't remember that, just remember whatever's left over that you want to see either chopped in half or with a hole in it or whatever, that goes in the bool last. So in that case, it's going to be the copy of the sphere. So I drag the bool in first, and then the sphere, and then I have a half a dome. And then I can push that down. Oops, what am I doing? I'm moving the sphere around inside the bool. So when you move these things, like I can still go to the original sphere here, and I can totally alter how that looks, because the sphere is there still. It's just invisible until you convert it. And so with this one, I don't want to move anything around. I want to move the parent object. So be very careful that you move the parent object and not one of the children when you're, screwing it around and messing with it. And also you can see, because I made this thing way up here and down here, that's coordinate 0. The axis is always going to be on that spot if you make something above it like I did. And so you can always go to your axis tool and drag your axis back over to your shape so it makes it easier to move around. Just remember to get off the axis tool when you're done. And that way you can see, like, now it's much easier to manipulate, as opposed to, like, if I left the axes down here, look how hard it is to kind of move around separate from that. So these are basic things you're going to have to get used to as we learn to model more advancedly, because we're kind of like going into more advanced modeling now. There we go. We're getting out of the basics and we're kind of moving around into the more advanced stages. And so I kind of want to put this bool in the little area that I have selected. I do want to make sure that there's no like gaps there, so I can stretch it out if I need to. Squish it a little bit, get it to fit. I kind of like having a little space in there, kind of separates the cockpit. All right, so there it is. There's our cockpit of our spaceship. All right, now we'll give that a glass material later. We have some really good, funky, super cool, amazing glass under visualized materials down here under glass. And there's these ones called simple that I like a lot. I'll use like simple blue light or something. And I can put that onto the cockpit, and it looks like, it looks like glass. It is glass. Anyways, I'm gonna do it. So we're gonna do materials on this a little bit later, which will be another separate lesson. Now, what do I want to do with all this spare stuff? I have the rocket and the sphere, and I have this separate bool that's on top here. Let's convert all this stuff into simpler shapes. So with the rocket bool, I'm going to convert that current state to object, and then open up the copy, and I'm going to take those and select them all. You can hold down your command key or your shift key and just click on them one at a time. Or remember, you can drag a box around them. If you hold down your mouse button, whatever that box touches, it selects it. If you select something else by mistake, you can hold down your command key and deselect it or reselect it. So there's some rules down there that we haven't really played with too much. But I'm going to take that and do a conversion, connect plus delete. So now it is converted down to a polygon. What do I need to do with the original one? I can delete it. I don't need that anymore. Let's do the same thing to the top one here. Let's take the whole thing and do a conversion current state to object. That turns it into a copy made of polygons instead of primitives. We can take those and then go back to mesh and do a connect objects plus delete. So that'll delete the old one and connect them all into single piece. Do I need this original one anymore? Not unless it's perfect. So, at which I could keep it around if I suspect I might have to redo it or something, and still have the original left, so I don't have to do as much work if I have to redo it. But in this case, now look what we've done. We've reduced everything down to 3 simple shapes. So we have the extra cone. That's why I said make a copy of that cone in the beginning, because you're going to do stuff to this cone and you won't be able to use it anymore, and you don't want to remake a new one. So I would make sure you copy it. So what is this? This is the rocket shape. So I'm going to rename that rocket so we're not ending up with like what is what. And if you end up with a lot of stuff over here, which you will, and you don't name it, you're going to be doing like this, clicking on it for like days, like 30 minutes, trying to figure out like what part is what. Okay. All my axes are pretty good on the object, so I don't need to worry about those. Otherwise, I'd go down to my axes tool and fix the axes. But now it's really easily manipulable and editable and workable and doable and all that stuff. So what do? All right, well, this is the cockpit, but I don't really need to name that. You can call it where the pilot sits, or you could call it cockpit. Where your pilot would sit. So it's good to name. This is like going to be my engine. So you have to think about propulsion. All right, so there's the ship. Now, lastly, on this rocket shape, and I'm not going to do. I didn't do all this in class, but I think I did it in a couple of days. I'm kind of doing it all at once in this video just to save time. But in the back, we need to make an indentation for our rocket blast. So where you see, let's just close that. Where you see this part right back there, we're going to make it look like this. We have to make it have like an indentation so that we can put in our rocket blast effect coming out, because they're engines. So I'm going to do a new thing here. I'm going to go to the rocket and I'm going to start working with polygon tools. This is your polygons tool down here on the side toolbar. Normally when you're just doing modeling and moving around, shrinking and scaling and rotating and deforming and all bools, you're on the model tool up here, okay? Down here though, there's a similar looking tool called polygons. Has this orange square selected, meaning that you're going to go in there and now start selecting. This gives you the ability to select these individual parts. So I can basically just hold down my mouse button and it's like just rolling over or painting the polygons. And there's a rule with this. If you hold down your shift key, you can select multiple polygons. If you hold down your control key, you can subtract. So if I wanted to put a racing stripe on this, or pull out a dorsal fin or a wing, I can select that. We're going to just do the back here right now. So I'm going to select the back, and I'm going to go to Mesh in the menu bar, Create Tools, Extrude. And when you extrude, you don't go near the polygon, or the axes. You don't click on the axes. That just stretches out the polygons. You want to click on an actual polygon. So any of these little gold square shapes, you can see that I'm rolling over, those are the polygons. So you want to select those, and I usually get the ones that are far away from the axes. So this is the difference, as I pull those out and see how it creates new geometry. Or I can push it in, okay? If I were to just get the axes and push it in, you see how like it just stretches out the existing polygons. It's not really creating new geometry. But if I click on a polygon face and push or pull, it creates new geometry. So I'm going to push it in far enough where I can stick a rocket light. All right. And then if I want to do anything else to this, there's other tools available. I can hold down my shift key and I could go ahead and select these polygons really carefully. If I accidentally go like this and select some interior polygons, you always want to be careful that you don't have polygons selected that you don't want to be in the selection. You want to subtract those holding down your control key. Shift key adds, control key subtract. Now once I've selected those, there's other options under Create Tools like Bevel. There's Extrude. There's Extrude Inner, which we'll learn a little bit later. But on the bevel, I can kind of like create like a little like decorative kind of extra detail, pull that out a little bit. I'm going to put a extra detail on the back here, and we are going to first of all pull out a dorsal fin, and then we're also going to create a little nub back here. Under select in the main menu bar, which we're going to cover this week, we have what's called a loop selection. It's a different way of selecting stuff. Normally you're on live selection, which is this circle, and that allows us to take this little circle and just roll over the polygons that we want to select, and then we go to extrude and we can pull out new geometry, and you can go ahead and just keep pulling out geometry, and you can shrink those polygons down, and you can go and select new stuff and just keep extruding, and like you can go to the side polygons now and select those and extrude those out, and you just can do all kinds of, oops, I think I went to bevel. I did. Clicked on bevel by mistake. You can just keep, creating like all kinds of advanced shapes. I mean, this is what modeling is about. I don't want to do all that though. I'm just kind of showing you. There's a different selection method called loop, which is really nice. You can go ahead and, if you have, before I do it, if you have polygons selected and you want to deselect them, just take your tool and click off into empty space, like over here, and then it will deselect them. So like just to deselect, just click it anywhere there's an empty space, click down, and it deselects. Otherwise, if you have those selected and you want to deselect them, you can hold down your option key and roll over them if you want to do that, or the command key, sorry, so the command key allows you to subtract, and the shift key allows you to add. Command key. All right. Anyways, we're going to take loop selection. This is what we did in class. We took that. We're going to select that area. That gets an entire loop. It makes it much easier to select. So I could get like all those, or I can get all those, or I can, get a whole row this way. And if I hold down my shift key, I can get like, stripes and do stuff where I'm extruding that area. Okay, so you're gonna get really good with this. Don't worry about it. It's just like the beginning of class where you're like a little awkward. This is all new. But I'm gonna I'm gonna go to loop selection, and I'm gonna get a loop back here, and I'm gonna go ahead and extrude that out a little bit like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and bevel it a little bit like that. And the reason we're putting that back there is just not only to give our ship a little bit more detail, but also it'll create a little cool lighting effect later. All right, so let's drag out our dorsal fin for our rocket shape. We need 3 of them. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go in there and we're going to select like a little area back here. So we're going to kind of like go ahead and do this sort of thing that you see here. We need to get the opposite side here. And this is where you want to be really careful and make sure you get the same area. I think I'm just going to get that curvy spot. I'm going to count polygons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I got to make sure I'm in the middle here. And then I want to look at here and say, okay, I have a little extra polygon right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then we kind of like look at it and see and make sure that is 6 polygons. That we have the right polygons selected on both ends. You can do like both sides at once, but you can't do the top and bottom at once. And then we're going to go to Mesh, Create Tools, Extrude. And when you extrude, you click on the polygon, not the axis arrow. And you stretch it out as far as you want it to go. It's going to flare outwards like a little guppy. Or a puffer fish, because it's matching the curvature of the cockpit. But we could take our scaling tool and scrunch those down And then we can take our scaling tool by clicking on the green axis only. We can go to the blue one and scrunch that in. We can take our arrow tool, and sometimes you do want to push the polygons around and not like extrude them. In this case, I'm going to push them back like that. All right, and we'll stick our rocket on the end of those, okay? So this other rocket will stick onto the end of those. And then we'll do the same thing for the top. So we'll select like maybe 5 polygons right there in the middle. Oops, am I in the middle? I am not in the middle, I'm off to the side. So you always want to check and double check to see what polygons are selected, and see, like, sometimes accidentally you grabbed a polygon over here or something, you know, and then you start doing stuff to it, and it's really much harder to go back and fix that than it is to just like take a moment and be mindful of making sure you have the right polygons selected. So I'm going to select 5 and 5. All right, and then I'm going to go to Mesh, Create Tools, Extrude, and I'm going to extrude those out. I kind of want to be like visible on what I do, because when you extrude, as you learned already in class, every time you click and stop and drag, it creates new geometry and a new section, and you don't want to do this right now. Sometimes you do want to add like section after section after section, but these are all separate pieces and it makes it much harder to work with, as opposed to if I just was bold and brave and dragged it out. If you want to do like extra details, like you can drag out a platform like that, and then you can go to Create Tools and do what's called an Extrude Inner, which creates a subset of polygons. And then I could go back to Mesh and do a extrude that. So it kind of creates like a little, sort of little extra bevel there. And when you do that extrude out, you got to be like sure you do it in one swoop. Otherwise, you can't really like stop and then like drag it out again. You create another set of geometry, which makes it much harder to work with. So I'm kind of trying to match the wings there. And remember, when you drag it out, it matches the curvature. So I could go to one of my axes and squish it. Oops, what did I do wrong? I didn't double check my polygons down there at the bottom to see if they match the top. And it got all screwy. So let's undo it before we extrude anything. And make sure that when this is the lesson, make sure that we, Control key, grab exactly the polygons we had in mind when we do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is dead center. That is dead center. Okay? Excuse me. And then I'm going to go to Create Tools and do the Extrude Inner again. Or you know what? I'll just do Extrude. So Create Tools, Extrude, a little bit, back to Create Tools, Extrude Inner, drag in, back to Mesh, Create Tools, Extrude now, click on the polygon face and pull it up into my wing or my dorsal fin. All right, so now it's straight. All right, so don't make that mistake. It's an easy mistake to make. Let's squish it. Let's squish it this way, and let's push it back so it's more, aerodynamic. All right, let's take that rocket now, and that extra rocket engine here, and we'll go back to our modeling tool over here to the side, and we'll push it over there into position, and we're just gonna sink it on top of that right there. Now that needs a little indentation too for a rocket blast, so that's when I'll go back to my polygons tools and I'll select that circular area, and then we'll go back to extrude and push that in. All right, real basic shape. This is really basic, simple modeling. And just so you know, whoops, I want to go back to my modeling tool when I want to move it. So I'm going to copy, and when I want to copy paste it, don't stay on the axes tool. And then copy paste. Bring one over here to the side. Make sure it's attached. Copy paste. Alright. I think this one needs to go a little bit more. There we go. That one needs to come up a little bit. Alright, now my rocket ship is pretty much done. You know what, I like these, but I think they should all, I'm just going to do them all at the same time. So I'm going to hold down my shift key and select each one. Do I have to click on them on the screen? No, I could hold down my shift key and click on them over here and maybe move them all together. Looks like I have an extra one, I think. Yeah, I do have an extra one. So I can hold down my shift key and get them all here and then push them all back, or I could go to my moving tool here and click on them one at a time on the screen, holding down my shift key. But you know, like I said before, sometimes there's so many things on your screen it's hard to click on it, and the easiest method to actually select it is just to go over here and click on it. I'm going to push them back was my point. I thought they were a little bit too forward. Alright, my rocket ship is, I mean, it's not, I don't have any textures on it, but it's almost done. I still have to do the lights, the jet fuel and stuff. So this is what we're going to do this week, and then when I'm done with this, I'll cover the UFO. The UFO is much simpler, and if you want to add like a UFO to your rocket, like spaceship, like maybe it flies across the path of your rocket, like a little extra, like, you know, drama for your little solar system fly through, that'd be cool. Or if you want to make your main ship UFO, you can. But anyways, I know that was a little bit of a longer lesson because I included a lot of stuff in there, but remember, we're going to be using bool, and we're going to be using bulge deformer, and we're going to be going to mesh, create tools, extrude, and then also mesh conversion, connect objects plus delete, and current state to object. We're going to be using all that stuff and a few more like different primitive shapes today. And this should be your end result. You can put any sort of decorative twist on this that you want. If you would like to start adding more details to the main rocket shape, like if you wanted to, I don't know, like maybe you wanted to have a, let's go to our modeling tool over here. So remember to go to, get off the modeling tool and go to the polygons tool. But let's say I wanted to have like a vent of like swirling energy. I could go ahead and select that area and try to like match. So I'm going to count polygons. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3 down. So I'm going to subtract that area. I'm going to subtract this area. Make sure that I have the same polygons on each side. So you always want to really check out your selection before shift key adds, control key, or command key subtracts. Sorry if I said that wrong. And now that I have those two areas, like I can set this as a separate color. I could go to extrude and extrude it in, and then maybe later I could do what's called a set selection under select, and where I went to loop selection down here at the bottom, set selection. And then what you do is you go over here and give it a name, 1, 2, 3, something easy. And then I go get a texture, like let's say I load under broadcast preset animated backgrounds, fire cycle. Where is that? There it is. For a minute I couldn't see it. And then I drag that material onto my rocket, and it goes on the whole thing, but if I only want it to go to that vent I just created, then I click on the material, and where it says selection, just below where you're animating it, I can type in the name that I gave it just a minute ago, and call 1, 2, 3, and now it only applies to that spot. So we can give these things incredible detail, which we're going to do next in class, and then I'll record that as a separate lesson too as we start texturing these. And then also the lights, the rocket parts that will be in the back of these. So don't forget, you're going to have these cool starburst kind of light effects as it blasts through your universe. So we have to do those too. All right, so I'll see you in class. Goodbye.